The Tempest with an Introduction to Chaos as the Human Condition. Imagine standing on a cliff's edge. Salt spray stinging your face as a hurricane roars around you. The wind doesn't just howl. It screams with the voices of unanswered emails, unresolved arguments, and unspoken fears. Lightning cracks the sky into fragments of deadlines, diagnoses, and doubts. Rain pelts your skin like the infinite scroll of newsfeeds and notifications, each drop a demand for your attention. This isn't a scene from a myth. This is Tuesday. This is the human condition. Chaos isn't an aberration, it's the weather of existence. Even the ancient Stoics knew this. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Life is a river of passing events, violent torrents one moment, calm waters the next." But here's the twist: the storm isn't just outside us. It's within. Think of the last time you lay awake at 3 a.m., your mind a marketplace of regrets and rehearsals for disasters that never came. That's the tempest we carry in our chests, a whirlwind of what-ifs and if-onlys that no umbrella can shield. Buddhist teacher Thich Nhat Hanh once said, "We have more possibilities available in each moment than we realize." Yet modern life has turned possibility into a burden. We're drowning in choices, paralyzed by freedom. Your phone buzzes with a friend's engagement photos, and suddenly your own life feels like a poorly edited draft. A traffic jam becomes a moral failure. A missed promotion becomes proof you're unworthy. We've confused existing in chaos with being chaos. I've watched students clutch their coffee cups like talismans against the day, their eyes darting between screens as if salvation lay in refreshing a feed. But here's the secret the Stoics whispered through the ages. The storm doesn't need calming. Our relationship to it does. Consider the oak and the reed in Aesop's fable. The oak stood rigid against the wind and snapped. The reed bent and survived. Stoicism isn't about becoming the oak, though that's the common misunderstanding. It's about becoming the reed, not by weakening, but by cultivating intelligent flexibility. Epictetus, born a slave, knew this intimately. "It's not what happens to you, but how you react that matters," he said, his chains clinking as he spoke. Picture a commuter trapped on a stalled subway. One passenger breathes in ragged bursts, radiating frustration like heat waves. Another closes her eyes, noticing the rhythm of her heartbeat beneath the screech of brakes. Both are in the same storm, only one is drowning. Buddhism's contribution is the radical notion that we can sit in the eye of the hurricane. Not by force, but through what's called equanimity, the art of non-preference. Imagine a chef's knife slicing through a tomato clean, effortless, not clinging to the fruit nor resisting it. That blade is the mind in meditation. The tomato is this moment, exactly as it is. Social media algorithms exploit our biological craving for novelty, yes, but the Buddha's monkey mind metaphor predates Instagram by 500 years. We've always been primates swinging from thought branch to thought branch. The chaos isn't new. Our awareness of it is. Let me offer you a scene. A single mother balances a toddler on her hip while burning rice bowls over. Her boss's email pings, the dog barks. Through the window, she sees rain soaking the laundry she forgot to bring in. Now watch closely, she stops, not fleeing, not fixing. For 3 breaths, she feels the weight of her child, smells the scorched starch. Here's the canine alarm. She doesn't judge the storm, she becomes it. In that pause, that infinitesimal space between stimulus and response, she finds what the Stoics called apatheia. Not apathy, but freedom from being tossed about by passions. The rice will scorch. The laundry will rewash. But in that moment, she's not opposing chaos, she's dancing with it. The Roman philosopher Seneca advised, "You must live for another if you wish to live for yourself." Here's the alchemy. When we stop trying to control the storm, we become anchors for others. Think of emergency room nurses during a night shift, their calm hands steadying panic patients. Their stillness isn't indifference. It's a choice to meet chaos with presence. The Dalai Lama, when asked if he ever gets angry, laughed. "Oh, frequently. But I don't let it stay for tea." That's the Stoic Buddhist blend in action. We don't eradicate the storm, we build a hearth inside it. So we arrive at the threshold question: how to kindle that inner fire when the winds of chaos blow. The answer lies not in the sky but in the soil. Not in escaping the storm, but in rooting so deeply that we can taste the rain as nourishment. Tomorrow's session will dig into those roots, the practices that turn turbulence into teacher. For now, let's close with a paradox from Heraclitus, that weeping philosopher who saw the world in flames. The soul is dyed the color of its thoughts. What hue will your storm reveal? The Stoic anchor philosophy as the bedrock beneath waves. Let's begin by revisiting Heraclitus' flame, the idea that our thoughts color the soul. Now imagine that same fire smelted into iron, hammered into an anchor by the blacksmiths of ancient Athens. This is Stoicism, not a shield against the storm, but a weighty truth that keeps us from capsizing when waves crest. Picture a trireme in the Aegean Sea, its wooden hull creaking under Poseidon's wrath. The sailors don't waste breath cursing the wind, they lower the anchor. Not to stop the storm, that's impossible, but to keep the ship from drifting into rocks. Marcus Aurelius, writing by lamplight amid the Marcomannic Wars, understood this. You have power over your mind, he scribbled, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. The anchor isn't a denial of chaos. It's a deliberate grip on the one thing chaos cannot touch: your judgment. Consider the ship captain who loses cargo to a rogue wave. A modern response might rage against the sea, demand refunds, post angry rants. The Stoic captain. She assesses what's left. The storm stole her goods, yes, but not her skill to navigate, nor her courage to sail again. This is the dichotomy of control as Epictetus taught, polished smooth as a ship's bell. Your job. The anchor, your reputation. The storm, your character. That's the hole you've caulked daily through virtuous choices. When Seneca advised, a gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials, he was mapping the seed where anchors hold. But anchors can rust. I once met a CEO who prided himself on Stoic discipline. He rose at 4 a.m., tracked every minute, quoted Musonius Rufus at staff meetings. Yet when his toddler drew crayon art on a contract, he erupted. His anchor had become an idol, rigid, brittle, all chain and no give. Buddhism warns of this with the parable of the raft. A man builds a boat to cross a river, then straps it to his back in the forest, crippled by its weight. Stoicism, when dogmatic, chains us to the seabed so stubbornly that we forget anchors are meant to be lifted when the sky's clear. Here's where the ballast matters. Ancient ships stored stones in their bellies to stay upright. Stoic virtues as weighty as these stones. Justice, courage, temperance, wisdom, 4 rocks that balance us. A nurse triaging patients in a pandemic uses all 4. Justice distributes care equitably. Courage holds her hand steady for the IV. Temperance keeps her from hoarding masks. Wisdom tells her when to rest. But ballast alone won't save you. I've seen activists burn out, their principles intact but their compassion ash. Why? They mistook the anchor for the voyage. Buddhism's middle way oils the anchor's chain. A Tibetan monk once told me, Stoicism is the mountain, meditation is the rain that softens it. Picture a farmer in a drought. He could curse the clouds of futile or dig deeper wells, Stoic control. But if he also collects dew each dawn with bamboo leaves on mindfulness, he survives the dry spell. The Stoic says, endure. The Buddhist adds, and stay tender. When Zeno lost everything in a shipwreck, he didn't just found Stoicism on the rocks of Athens. He let the waves strip him bare first, becoming teachable as driftwood. Modern life pelts us with hailstones of opinion. Social media, like the Greek chorus of old, amplifies every tremor. A teenager checks likes on a post, her anchor swaying with each notification. Contrast this with the Stoic student who journals each dawn, weighing thoughts like coins. Does this concern what's mine to govern? He asks, as Epictetus trained him. His anchor drops, his ballast holds, but then he fails an exam. Here's the test. Will his anchor become a millstone of self-reproach? Or can he let Buddhist non-attachment whisper, the sea isn't spoiled by one sinking ship? History offers a compass. In 79 AD, ash from Vesuvius rained on Pompeii. Amid the panic, Pliny the Elder ordered his ship to sail toward the eruption, not away, to rescue friends. He anchored in lethal winds, suffocated by toxic fumes. Heroic.
Yes, Stoic.
Debatable. Sometimes anchors must be raised to save lives. Years later, his nephew Pliny the Younger wrote about the disaster without bitterness, honoring both the courage and the tragedy. That's mature Stoicism, knowing when to hold fast and when to cut the chain. So how do we maintain our anchor? Polish it daily. When a spouse betrays you, polish with the cloth of, what's mine to heal? When layoffs strike, polish with, how can I serve with what remains? But also, let meditation be the salt water that prevents corrosion. Sit each morning not to empty the mind, but to listen to the creak of your anchor's iron, the sound of a soul holding fast. The Zen master Senkin wrote, "The great way is not difficult for those who have no preferences." Pair that with Cleantha's hymn to Zusi. Led me, O fate, wherever your decrees have fixed my station. Together they form a hybrid anchor, rooted yet responsive. You'll know your anchor is true when chaos becomes a dance partner rather than a mugger. A musician mid-audience heckling doesn't flinch. He adjusts tempo. A firefighter in a blaze feels fear's heat but doesn't flee, his training a ballast of virtue. Even a child bullied on a playground can whisper Marcus Aurelius' truth. The opinion of 10,000 men is of no value if none of them know anything about the subject. The storm shouts, the anchor holds. But remember, anchors are tools, not trophies. The moment we boast of our unshakability, we're already adrift. When the Buddha said, "You are the sky," everything else is weather, he wasn't dismissing the storm. He was reminding us that anchors, too, are weather, necessary, but not the essence of our being. So let the Stoic anchor ground you, but let the Buddhist breeze fill your sails. The chaplain who comforts a dying atheist uses both the anchor of duty, the sail of boundless compassion. In the end, we're all sailors on loan to the sea. The Phoenicians had a prayer. May your anchor grip the ledge, may your sails drink wind, may your ballast keep you true. To that we add, may you know when to stay moored and when to ride the storm's wild current toward undiscovered shores. The meditative eye. Finding the storm's silent center, let's set sail from the anchor of Stoicism and steer toward the eye of the hurricane. Imagine standing on the deck of that trireme again, the same Aegean storm whipping salt into your eyes. The wind howls, waves tower like liquid mountains, yet at the storm's heart lies a circle of eerie calm, the meditative eye. This isn't escape, it's transformation. Just as a hurricane draws power from the chaos it organizes, we too can find a silent pivot point within life's turbulence. Close your eyes and feel your breath in-out, like the tide's whisper beneath the tempest. This breath is your compass, not pointing north but inward, to where the storm's roar becomes a distant hum. I once watched a street musician play violin during a Times Square rush hour. Taxis honked, tourists jostled, neon signs flickered, a perfect chaos, yet his bow never faltered. When I asked how he stayed focused, he smiled. I listened to the space between notes. That's where the music breathes. Meditation is that space. It's not about silencing the mind's cacophony, but hearing the stillness beneath it. The Buddha called this the unconditioned, a awareness untouched by passing storms. Picture a snow globe shaken violently. The flakes are your thoughts, deadlines, regrets, fears. Meditation isn't stopping the shake, it's watching the flakes settle without grabbing at them. Stoicism taught us to anchor in virtue, but meditation teaches us to float. Think of a jellyfish in a tsunami. Its body ripples with the current, yet it doesn't tear. Why? It's 95% water, matching the storm's substance. Similarly, mindfulness lets us become one with chaos without resistance. A young mother once told me how she survived her toddler's tantrums. "I stopped fighting the meltdowns," she said. "Now I sit on the floor, breathe, and become the calm in her hurricane. She rages, but the storm passes quicker because I'm not fueling it with my own frustration." That's the meditative eye in action, not controlling the gale, but harmonizing with its rhythm. Contrast this with Stoicism's disciplined resolve. Imagine two blacksmiths. The Stoic hammers red-hot iron into an anchor, each strike deliberate. The Buddhist, meanwhile, tends the forge's fire, aware of every flame's dance but never grasping at it. Both are necessary. When a doctor delivers a terminal diagnosis, Stoicism steels her voice to speak truth. Meditation holds space for the patient's grief without drowning in it. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." Meditation is the rinsing water, preventing the dye from staining too deep. Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh once compared mindfulness to a pebble dropped in a river. The water adjusts, he said, and continues to flow. Apply this to a modern crisis. Your flight is canceled, stranding you overnight. The Stoic assesses Kirkholm factors, rebooking, finding a hotel, while the meditative mind observes frustration rise like steam, then dissipate. You're still inconvenienced, but not compounded by inner resistance. Epictetus would approve, we cannot choose our external circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond. Meditation ensures our response isn't a knee-jerk reaction, but a conscious choice. History brims with fused examples. Take Roman general Scipio Africanus, who meditated daily before battles, visualizing both victory and loss. By confronting the storm of uncertainty head-on, he cultivated what Buddhists call equanimity, steady calm regardless of outcome. Or consider Queen Maya, the Buddha's mother, whose legendary stoicism during childbirth became a symbol of grace under duress. These aren't opposing forces, they're twin currents in the same river. Modern chaos demands both. Imagine a cybersecurity analyst during a hack. Alarms blare, screens flash red, digital chaos. Her Stoic training prioritizes seal breaches, reset passwords. Yet her meditative practice stops panic from short-circuiting logic. She notices her racing heart, labels it fear, then returns to keystrokes. The hack becomes a dance, problem-solving partnered with presence. As Seneca wrote, sometimes even to live is an act of courage. Meditation makes that courage sustainable. You might wonder, can we really access this eye of calm mid-storm? Picture a surfer riding a 30-foot wave in Nazare. The wall of water could crush him, yet he finds the sweet spot, the wave's shoulder, where momentum and balance align. Meditation is that shoulder. It's not passivity, it's dynamic stillness. A CEO I mentor practices this by pausing before every decision to touch her wrist. I feel my pulse, she says. If it's frantic, I wait. The answer comes clearer once I'm the eye. Even neuroscience confirms this. When we meditate, the amygdala, the brain's alarm bell, quiets, while the prefrontal cortex, responsible for reasoned action, brightens. We're literally rewiring to become the calm eye. The Stoics knew this intuitively. Musonius Rufus taught that training the mind is the most necessary task, comparing it to a lamp shielded from wind. Meditation is that shielding. So how do we cultivate this eye? Start with breath, not controlled but observed. Like tracking a pendulum swing, follow each inhale and exhale. Thoughts will intrude, let them. Imagine each as a leaf floating down a river. Your job isn't to fish them out but to note their passing. Over time, the river widens, the leaves matter less. I've seen war veterans use this to diffuse PTSD flashbacks. I name the thought, memory, and return to breath, one told me. It doesn't erase the past, but it stops the past from hijacking now. Stoicism's anchor and meditation's eye are symbiotic. When financial ruin looms, Stoicism asks, what can I control? Meditation asks, can I face the unknown without becoming its hostage? Together, they forge unshakable resilience. Remember the Phoenician sailor's prayer. Add a Zen twist, may your anchor hold, may your eye stay clear, and may your journey through storms reveal the calm that was always yours. Weaving the sail synergy of discipline and surrender now, let's weave these threads into a sail. Imagine holding a loom where one thread is spun from Stoic discipline, strong, unyielding, dyed with the deep indigo of virtue, and the other is meditation's golden thread, shimmering with the lightness of awareness. The Stoic thread alone makes a sturdy cloth, but without the needle of mindfulness, it remains a flat tapestry, unable to catch the wind. The meditative thread alone is ethereal, beautiful but insubstantial. Together, they become a sail, flexible yet resilient, rooted yet responsive. This is the synergy we cultivate. Not rigid control, not passive drifting, but the art of harnessing chaos itself as propulsion. Consider the daily ritual of setting the sail. A Stoic morning reflection, where you align with your core values, becomes the act of choosing your direction. Like a sailor checking the horizon at dawn, you ask, what is within my control today? What virtues will guide me? But then, meditation stitches intention with presence. Close your eyes and breathe into the space between those resolutions. Notice the flutter of doubt, the itch of impatience, not as enemies, but as winds to adjust to. A CEO I know begins each day reciting Marcus Aurelius, you have power over your mind, not outside events, then sits in silence, feeling the weight of that power in her breath. The sail isn't set once, it's a daily recommitment to both discipline and surrender. Modern life bombards us with hurricanes. Imagine you're in a heated team meeting. A colleague critiques your proposal sharply. The Stoic thread tightens. This is an external. My worth isn't tied to their words. The meditative needle follows, weaving space to observe your rising defensiveness without acting on it. You might respond, or you might pause and let the storm pass. Here, the sail adjusts. The Buddha's teaching echoes. Better than 1,000 hollow words is one word that brings peace. Stoicism gives you the fabric of self-respect. Meditation lets you choose whether to speak or hold silence, unswayed by ego's gusts. Even ancient warriors understood this dance. Take the samurai Miyamoto Musashi, who wrote, "Perceive that which cannot be seen with the eye." His Book of Five Rings blends combat strategy with Zen mindfulness. Before battle, he'd meditate on death's inevitability, Stoic memento mori, then enter the fray with a mind, like water, adapting to each strike. His sword was Stoic steel, his fluidity, meditative awareness. Similarly, when a firefighter charges into a burning building, their training Stoic drills meets moment-by-moment awareness, meditative focus. Each step a stitch in the sail between duty and presence. But how do we maintain this weave mid-chaos? Practice, adjusting to the wind, through micro-pauses. Set phone reminders to breathe. 3 conscious breaths every hour. With each inhale, anchor in a Stoic principle, amor fati. Love of fate. With each exhale, release mental clutter. A teacher I admire does this between classes. She touches her ring, a physical anchor, whispering Epictetus's bear and forbear, then watches her breath until her shoulders drop. These pauses aren't escapes, they're rhythmic rebalancings, like a sailor constantly tweaking sail trim. The danger lies in mistaking stillness for stagnation. A sailboat moored in a harbor never discovers new shores. True stillness is dynamic, a parent rocking a feverish child through the night, their arms steady but their heart tender. Stoicism keeps them from crumbling under fatigue. Meditation keeps their touch gentle, attuned to the child's whimpers. Or a nurse during a night shift, where trige, Stoic prioritization meets holding a dying patient's hand as meditative compassion. As Thich Nhat Hanh taught, the most precious gift we can offer others is our presence. Even nature models this fusion. Bamboo forests withstand typhoons because their stalks bend, awareness of the wind's force, yet their roots grip the earth with Stoic tenacity. We are bamboo and bedrock. When financial loss hits, Stoicism grounds us in frugality and effort. Meditation softens the blow, allowing grief without collapse. The sail billows, the boat heals, but it doesn't capsize. Skeptics might argue, this is just positive thinking. Not so. It's prepared thinking. A sailor doesn't wish away storms, they study charts and tides. Stoic preparation, then ride the waves with alert curiosity, meditative openness. A 2021 study found that combining cognitive reappraisal, Stoic reframing with mindfulness reduced anxiety 30% more than either alone. The sail outperforms the anchor or the breeze, so weave fiercely but with patience. Each mindful breath is a stitch, each Stoic action a thread. When the next storm hits, and it will, you won't just endure, you'll voyage. Navigating the abyss, confronting existential whirlpools. Imagine, if you will, the moment a sailor peers over the edge of their ship into the midnight depths below. The ocean here isn't the familiar surface. Choppy with waves, yes, but navigable. But a yawning abyss, dark and cold enough to crush bones. This is where we must go. Not around the trench, not across it, but into it. Existential chaos, grief, failure, the raw truth of mortality, is not a storm to outrun but a depth to descend into, armed with nothing but the lantern of meditation and the compass of amor fati. Stoicism's love of fate isn't passive resignation, it's the deliberate choice to dive, knowing that in the abyss, pressure transforms coal into diamonds. Let me share a story. A woman I once met, a marine biologist, described diving into the Mariana Trench at 36,000 feet, where sunlight surrenders to eternal night. She found creatures glowing with bioluminescence, life thriving in the crushing dark. The abyss, she said, doesn't drown you. It shows you what light you carry. When her husband died unexpectedly, she applied the same principle. Stoicism became her dive suit. Marcus Aurelius's words, "The impediment to action advances action," reminded her that grief wasn't a barrier, but the very water through which she must move. Each morning, she meditated on his absence, not to fix it, but to let her sorrow glow like those trench creatures, acknowledged, integrated, alchemized. This is the dance of the abyss. Seneca, exiled to Corsica's rocky shores, wrote letters not of bitterness, but of gratitude for the solitude that haunted his clarity. He didn't deny the sting of injustice. He dove into it, finding in its depths the hidden currents of inner freedom. Similarly, Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh, when asked how to handle despair, advised, "Smile to your sorrow. It is a part of you, but it is not all of you." Stoic acceptance meets meditative tenderness here. Imagine holding a dying loved one's hand. Stoicism steadies your trembling. Epictetus is bear and forbear, while meditation opens your heart to the sacredness of their final breaths, the unspoken words hanging like bioluminescent specks in the dark. Chaos becomes navigable when we dissolve the illusion that we're separate from the storm. Marcus Aurelius, during his night watches on the Germanic front, wrote, "The universe is change. Our life is what our thoughts make it." He wasn't denying the clang of swords or the wariness of command. He was practicing what I call abyssal awareness, seeing the battlefield as both external reality and internal landscape. His journaling was meditation, observing fear without letting it steer. A modern parallel. A friend, an ER doctor during COVID's peak, recited Seneca's "Fortune favors the brave" before each shift, not as a pep talk, but as a mantra to anchor her. Then, between intubations, she'd close her eyes and count breaths, not to escape the horror, but to meet it with a steadier hand. But how do we avoid drowning in the descent? Here the Stoic and meditative threads intertwine like kelp forests, offering footholds. Start small. When criticism strikes, pause. Feel the sting meditation's raw presence. Then ask, what part of this is true? What can I control? A Stoicism's discernment. A poet I admire does this with rejection letters. He lets himself ache for 3 breaths, honoring the wound. Then repeats Zeno's reminder, happiness is a flow of virtue. The rejection isn't a verdict. It's a current redirecting him toward truer shores. The abyss also teaches that light isn't the absence of dark, but a quality of perception. Consider the Japanese concept of wabi-sabi, finding beauty in imperfection. A cracked vase repaired with gold becomes more radiant for having been broken. Similarly, meditation helps us see cracks not as flaws but as channels for grace. A man who survived bankruptcy told me he'd meditate on Marcus's "The obstacle is the way," visualizing his debt as a spiraling trench. Over time, he noticed its walls weren't smooth but studded with handholds, lessons in humility, creativity, letting go. Yet some whirlpools seem inescapable. Mortality, the ultimate abyss. Here, Stoic, memento mori, remember you must die, and the Buddhist contemplation of impermanence converge. A terminally ill patient once described her daily practice. Each morning, she'd read Seneca's letters on the brevity of life, then sit silently, visualizing her breath as a tide washing over her remaining days. Death, she said, became less a threat and more a horizon, something to sail toward, not flee. Her acceptance wasn't defeat. It was the ultimate act of navigation, using death's inevitability as a compass to live fully. Does this mean we become indifferent to pain? Never. Even Seneca wept for his lost friends. But indifference and resilience are not the same. Resilience is the bamboo bending in the typhoon, the sailor adjusting sails mid-squall. When my son was born prematurely, I oscillated between stoic resolve, this is fate, love it, and meditative surrender, sitting for hours in the ICU, focusing only on the rhythm of his tiny breaths. The 2 practices didn't negate my fear, they gave it a vessel. As Rumi wrote, the wound is the place where the light enters you. The abyss, once entered, becomes a womb. So let us dive, friends, not once but daily. When the waves of chaos rise, don't cling to the ship's wreckage. Submerge. Let Stoicism weight your bones so you sink past the panic, and let meditation illuminate the treasures below, the strength in grief, the wisdom in failure, the fierce joy of fleetingness. The abyss isn't our enemy. It's our teacher, and in its silent depths, we learn to stop fighting the storm and become the ocean. The alchemy of storm-like conclusion and call to inner metamorphosis. Let's revisit the storm. Not as a force to survive, but as a forge. Picture lightning not as a threat, but as a flash of clarity. The moment a potter, hands slick with clay, sees the crack in her vase and chooses not to discard it, but to fill the fissure with gold. This is the alchemy of stormlight chaos, as the kiln where our raw edges are glazed with wisdom. The Stoics called this sympathia, the interconnectedness of all things, where every strike of adversity is a thread in the loom of the cosmos. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The blazing fire makes flames and brightness out of everything thrown into it." Imagine a farmer standing in a ruined field after a hurricane. Stoicism doesn't tell him to ignore the loss. It asks him to see the sodden earth as fertile. Meditation doesn't numb his grief. It lets him taste the rain mixing with his tears and whisper, "This too belongs." I think of a blacksmith I met in Kyoto. He repairs shattered samurai swords using a technique called kintsugi with metal. When clients bring him broken blades, he doesn't hide the fractures. He welds them with molten silver, creating rivers of light where the steel once split. The break is the art, he told me. His workshop sits near a Zen garden where raked gravel mimics storm-tossed seas. Each morning, he meditates on the impermanence of his craft, the way both swords and storms are shaped by forces beyond control. Yet, with stoic resolve, he chooses to transform rupture into radiance. When his wife left him, he applied the same principle. "I let the sorrow melt me," he said, "until I could pour myself into a new mold." This is the call, to stop seeking shelter and become the sanctuary. The Buddha taught that pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. Note optional, not non-existent. A bird doesn't curse the wind that buffets its wings, it adjusts its feathers. Similarly, Epictetus urged, "Don't demand that things happen as you wish, but wish that they happen as they do." During the London Blitz, a group of monks continued their meditations in a bombed-out chapel. When asked why they didn't flee, one replied, "The bombs remind us to build temples within." Each explosion became a bell of mindfulness, each tremor a chance to practice equanimity. They didn't transcend fear, they let it settle like sediment, revealing the clear water of courage beneath. But integration takes practice. Start with the mundane. Traffic jam, breathe in, acknowledging frustration, meditation's honesty. Breathe out, asking, "What does this delay free me to notice?" Stoicism's reframe. A teacher I know does this with classroom chaos. When students spiral into noise, she pauses. She feels her pulse quickens, honoring the storm, then quotes Clenthus, "The fates guide the willing, the unwilling, they drag." Her stillness becomes a tuning fork, recalibrating the room's energy. The storm's true gift is reciprocity. Rain nourishes roots, thunder shakes seeds from cones. The Stoic sage Seneca, in his essay on Providence, compared adversity to a stern teacher. Gold is tested by fire, brave men by misfortune. A surfer understands this. She doesn't conquer waves, she dances with their rage, knowing each crest that knocks her down also trains her lungs to crave air less and embrace depth more. My niece, a climate activist, embodies this. When faced with political apathy, she recites Marcus Aurelius, "What stands in the way becomes the way," then sits in zazen, visualizing her anger as monsoon rains feeding parched ground. Yet some ask, how can we love a storm that destroys? We don't. We love our capacity to rebuild from debris. After wildfires, certain plants only germinate in scorched soil. The Stoic meditative path is similar. When a friend lost her home to a flood, she knelt in the muck and journaled. "These ruins are my meditatio malorum," the Stoic practice of contemplating worst-case scenarios. But instead of despairing, she sketched plans for a floating garden, turning vulnerability into innovation. Her mantra, a Tibetan proverb, "Tragedy should be utilized as a source of strength." So here's the rallying cry, don't just weather the storm. Marry it. Let Stoicism be your anchor, the iron weight that steadies your core. Let meditation be your ocean, the boundless awareness that cradles each wave. When criticism strikes, be the cliff face that lets the acid rain sculpt its curves. When grief comes, be the mangrove forest that thrives in saltwater, roots tangled yet resilient. A jazz musician once told me, "The wrong note is just a stepping stone to the next riff." Life's chaos is our improvisation score. We are the water. Not the ship, not the sailor, but the sea itself. Capable of tsunami and tranquility, yet always at our essence, still. The Buddha sat unshaken beneath the Bodhi tree as Mara hurled temptations and terrors. Christ slept in the boat while tempests raged. Rumi wrote, "You are not a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop." This is the metamorphosis. Not rising above the storm, but widening until you contain it. So let the winds howl. Let the skies crack. Your practice is the alchemy that turns barrage into blessing, fear into fuel, darkness into a canvas for the light you carry. The storm isn't passing. It's praying. And you are both the prayer and the answer.